For years, Spider-Man has faced every imaginable threat, from the sinister schemes of Green Goblin to the relentless fury of Venom. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for this. What if I told you there came a day when Peter Parker wasn't just broken physically, but shattered mentally and emotionally? This is the story of how the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man witnessed the unthinkable, the death of everyone he loves, and worse yet, he gave up being Spider-Man. I'm Andrew the Geek Master, and in today's video, we'll dive into one of the darkest chapters in Spider-Man's history. To not miss stories like this one, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and let's get started. In this story, Dr. Doom, the new Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, has chosen Spider-Man as the new champion against the 8 Scions of Cyttorak, a role usually occupied by the Sorcerer Supreme, who periodically fought the Scions in exchange for a portion of the power of the god Cyttorak to protect Earth. Doom armed a reluctant Spider-Man with a new arcane armor and 8 life-restoring reeds from Ragador. Spidey has already used 2 extra lives to defeat the first 2 Scions, and the newest Scion, a red-haired girl on a bike, interrupted Peter's lunch with his friend Randy Robertson and his love interest, Shay Markin. While on a date with his girlfriend Shay and his friend Randy, Peter was interrupted and confronted by Serios, one of the Scions of Cyttorak, and the third to face the Spider-Man who had been named Earth's champion. Serios has the power to manipulate time, so she freezes time in the restaurant and then drags Spider-Man on a journey through painful moments from his past, like the death of Uncle Ben, the fall of Gwen Stacy, and other traumatic events. Peter's challenge was to endure all these moments without giving in, and he still had to surprise her in some way. During the challenge, the hero tried to hit her several times but was never successful, as she controlled time. Although injured and exhausted, Peter begins to formulate a plan. He realizes that Serios is always one step ahead because of her ability to jump through time, until suddenly a future version of Peter appears attacking Serios and revealing that Peter's plan had worked. It turns out he had built a machine in the future, capable of predicting her time jumps, and sent a future version of himself to the right moment in the battle. With this, he managed to surprise Serios and show that despite his limitations, he could be smarter than her. After being defeated, Serios became so angry that she launched a devastating attack on Peter. This attack scattered his consciousness across the entire timeline, forcing him to experience every moment of his life simultaneously: his birth, his death, and everything that happened between those points. The experience was unbearable for Peter, causing unimaginable pain and literally driving him to death. With this, he spent his 3rd life and returned to the present, to the moment where everything began. However, his mental and emotional state was already at its limit, so much so that he quickly found a way to say goodbye to Randy and Shay. The situation became so bad that he even raised his voice at Aunt May just because she pointed out something important that he had forgotten. So he decides to talk to someone who should understand him. Yes, he seeks emotional support from Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat. He apologizes for being an absent friend and admits that he's overwhelmed with the responsibilities of being Doom's champion, in addition to balancing his life as a hero and an ordinary person. Felicia advises him to find something that brings him happiness, emphasizing that even in the face of so many adversities, Peter is persistent and will find a way to make everything work. Following Felicia's advice, Peter goes on a picnic with his girlfriend Shay, where they finally get the chance to talk and relax. However, the next challenge for the hero was about to begin, as he was being watched from a distance by 2 more Scions of Cyttorak. Still, Peter kept enjoying the little things in life. He helps his friend Randy, assists Aunt May, and even arranged a dinner for Aunt May to finally meet his new girlfriend. However, it was now time for the 4th challenge. This time he faces Calyx, who is very arrogant and believes he will easily defeat Spider-Man. Calyx represents the inevitability of pain, and he sends his crimson hounds through the streets of New York to inflict pain on anyone they encounter. Peter has to choose between saving the people or trying to defeat Calyx directly. So Peter uses his magic to neutralize the dogs, sending them back from where they came, and then he proceeds to deliver a huge beating to the villain. Despite being strong, Calyx is not a skilled fighter, so Peter uses his agility and combat experience to dodge Calyx's attacks and counterattack, bringing him to his knees in defeat. Interestingly, Peter didn't die this time, something he even celebrates. However, the hero will be late for dinner with May and Shay because his next challenge begins immediately. Now he faces Sira, who represents the inevitability of death. However, to Peter's surprise, Sira shows signs of irritation, stating that all of this is a waste of time. To her, the Covenant is merely a collision of meaningless egos. She hates this situation and the false idea that anything they do matters, but despite that, she acknowledges that the confrontation is inevitable. Peter even suggests that she give up, but Sira explains that she is different from Calyx. Calyx seeks power and the approval of his father. Sira, on the other hand, just wants to go home, have some wine, and relax. Peter realizes that Sira is indeed different from the other scions of Sidorak. However, their conversation is interrupted by Calyx, who threatens Spider-Man. Peter calls him crazy and annoying, making Sira laugh. She even praises Peter for the comment, and the two seem to get along, but the hero reminds her that he doesn't want to die again. Sira knows this is true, but the challenge has arrived. Sira dares him to hold an orb that, according to her, reveals intolerable truths for humans. To win, Peter must endure the truths until there is nothing left to reveal. Well, upon touching the orb, Peter has extremely painful visions about the future. For example, Peter discovers that Aunt May will live to be 79 and will reach a significant position as the leader of an international organization called Feast. However, during the winter of that year, a deadly plague begins to spread rapidly across the world, and millions of people die in just a few weeks. May, a cancer survivor, was already in poor health and was especially vulnerable to the virus. No matter how much the doctors tried to help her, her lungs could no longer absorb oxygen properly. They explained that the only chance to keep her alive would be to place her in an intensive care bed with advanced support. But May, always selfless, made a courageous decision. She refused the bed, asking that it be given to someone who needed it more. Respecting her wish, the doctors transferred her to a peaceful place where she could rest. There, surrounded by strangers, May fell into a deep sleep, knowing that her end was near. She passed away with dignity, keeping her selfless spirit until the very last moment. Before dying, she still thought of Peter, as if she wanted to see him one more time. Next to be shown is Mary Jane. She faced many challenges throughout her life, starting with an abusive childhood. Despite this, Mary Jane never let those experiences define who she was. She kept her resilient spirit, finding strength to move forward. Mary Jane lived intensely and tried to do good wherever she could. At one significant moment in her life, she fell in love with a family friend, but that relationship was interrupted by life's circumstances. Later, she stood by someone who had the power to bend reality, and instead of using this power for personal gain, Mary Jane encouraged him to help people who had lost their loved ones until he lost his own son. This led her to carry deep feelings of dissatisfaction. Despite all her accomplishments and contributions, she reflected on her life and wondered if she could have lived differently or loved in another way. This feeling of unfinished business weighed on her, and when the time came for her death, Mary Jane passed away in Peter's arms, her former love. Jonah Jameson, who for so long was an influential and controversial public figure, passed away suddenly, a victim of a stroke. After his passing, the corporation that owned his magazine, likely the Daily Bugle, showed little regard for his memory. In less than a week, the focus shifted from Jonah to the company's interests. Shay Markin, Peter's current girlfriend, overcame many challenges to graduate and pay off her student loans. She worked hard to care for her patients in the best way possible, showing a strong sense of duty and compassion in her profession. However, her life was abruptly cut short by an unexpected event. A drunk driver crashed into her car, taking her life in a cruel and random manner. Randy Robertson had always been a champion for the oppressed, showing courage and commitment from a young age. His passion for justice led him to get involved in a march against the social crisis, where he continued his fight for equality and meaningful change. Unfortunately, the march took a violent turn, and Randy became one of the victims. During the chaos, he sustained fatal injuries, including a ruptured spine, leading to his death. Known as Black Cat, Felicia devoted herself to restoring economic balance in the world. She used her skills to redistribute wealth in a controversial manner, often challenging the system while walking the fine line between right and wrong. However, her luck, which had often seemed to protect her, finally came to an abrupt and tragic end. On an ordinary day, while carrying out one of her missions, Felicia fell to her death. After her death, the authorities confiscated all her assets, and her belongings were redistributed to the prison industrial complex. Beth Brandt was the matriarch of her family, a strong woman who always cared about keeping everyone united and supported. When her health began to deteriorate and her death approached, Beth was consumed by a deep fear. What would happen to her family without her? These thoughts tormented her in her final moments, but in a moment of clarity, Beth realized that in the end, she had lived a simple and happy life. Norman Osborn, known for his achievements as a businessman and his role as the Green Goblin, was one of the most influential and feared individuals during his life, but his death was not as grand as he had expected. After many years of manipulation and power games, what remained of Norman was forgetfulness. Norman Osborn's legacy was relegated to such a low level that his name almost vanished from the margins of history, remembered only in trivialities. Miles Morales, Bailey Briggs, and Gwen Stacy the Ghost Spider. The next generation of spiders was extinguished along with the lives of countless others. Their deaths will be irrelevant to the resolution of the cataclysm. They do not die as martyrs. They do not die as heroes. They simply die. Humans full of potential, promise, love, fear, and confusion one moment, empty shells of flesh and entrails the next. This last scene was the breaking point for Spider-Man. Peter cannot accept this. He fights against the idea of death, insisting that people deserve to live. However, Syra and Coulson, who now represents death, remind him that all that lives dies. It is then that Peter begins to understand the insignificance of life in the vastness of the universe. He feels the weight of the truth. Legacies disappear, great works are lost, and life returns to nothing. Peter's reaction is so sad that even Syra herself states that she hates all of this. However, Calyx, who had already been defeated, simply takes advantage of Peter's distraction to attack him. He begins to beat Spider-Man and kills him violently. The detail is that even in dying, Peter refused to release the sphere, symbolizing his ongoing struggle against the inevitability of death and its consequences. With that, Peter spends his fourth life and meets Coulson again, but it's clear that Peter is completely different. Moments later, Doctor Strange appears and laments the pain Peter has endured. He warns him about new challenges to come, claiming that they will be even harder. However, to Strange's surprise, Peter asks why they do it. Strange laments the vision Peter had, but Peter already knew everyone would die, and indeed, Peter agrees that humanity is insignificant. Strange still reminds him that he needs to fulfill his mission, or else the world will be in danger. However, surprisingly, Peter responds that he doesn't care. And that's a wrap on today's deep dive into Spider-Man's darkest moment. From the heart-wrenching deaths of those Peter Parker holds most dear to his ultimate breaking point, this story shows just how much one hero can endure. But don't worry, this isn't the end of Spidey's journey. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, leave a comment on your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more breakdowns, theories, and geeky content right here. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next adventure.